Hello everyone. Hope you're all doing great. I'm Behrouz Bigham, here with the second session of the comprehensive Corona rendering package. In this session, we'll continue learning about the Corona rendering engine. If you recall, in the previous session, we went over installing Corona, exploring its official website, checking out the license purchase section, gallery, forum, and learning about cache clearing methods. Now, let's move forward with our discussion. After installing Corona, the first thing we see is the panel containing its essential tools. These tools are crucial as they play a major role in simulation, prerequisites, and the expected rendering results. That's why understanding these tools thoroughly is important. Before diving into rendering settings and tab options, there are several key points to keep in mind before starting a project. We briefly covered these points in the modeling package, but since they are fundamental, let's go over them again. One essential setup at the beginning is defining the software unit, which is accessible via Customize Right Arrow Units setup. This determines the project's measurement scale. For architectural projects, meters are typically the best choice. However, for more precise work, such as cabinet design, centimeters may be more appropriate. Furthermore, if you plan to render jewelry or small objects like a needle, millimeters would be ideal. Next, there's the precision setup, which directly impacts the scale and input of shapes. If objects appear unusually small or too large in your project, chances are the settings in this section aren't configured properly. That's why we generally use centimeters for most cases. Another crucial section in Preferences, accessible via Customize Right Arrow Preferences, includes various personalization options. One of the most significant settings here is the undo limit, which is recommended not to exceed 20 steps for laptops to prevent performance issues. Moreover, in file settings, newer versions of Behrouz Max introduced a backup option. This feature not only creates an auto backup, but also an additional backup, ensuring no project data is lost. If you're working on a vital project, enabling this setting is highly recommended. One of the most essential features in the software is auto backup, which is used for automatically saving project files at specific intervals. To enable this function, users can set the number of backup files to 2, so that each new backup replaces the previous one. Additionally, users can customize the backup interval, such as every 10 or 15 minutes, to ensure automatic saving. Users may also assign custom names to backup files to easily identify them. Some users prefer manually saving their projects after making significant changes, which is a valid approach. However, during long work sessions, it's common to forget to save, which can lead to loss of progress. The auto backup feature is specifically designed to prevent such issues and ensure that no data is lost. Next, we move on to viewport settings, which control how models and objects appear in the Behrouz Max interface. For example, when selecting a model, an outline or highlight may appear around it, and this setting can be disabled if necessary. Although it is not a critical adjustment, users can tweak it according to their preferences. One common issue in Behrouz Max is incorrect material rendering. Sometimes materials are not properly assigned, causing models to appear broken or entirely black. The primary reason for this issue is the software failing to recognize the material. Additionally, incorrect graphics settings can also affect how models are displayed. Users can access the viewport settings and modify the graphics mode. The default is DirectX 11, but if there are issues with rendering, alternative modes can be tested. Restarting the software, or even the PC, might be necessary for changes to take effect. Another important aspect is gamma correction, which controls brightness and contrast, black and white levels, in a scene. Occasionally, users may find their 3D workspace too dark or overly bright. This typically happens due to incorrect gamma settings. The gamma settings are accessible in Preferences. The international standard gamma value is 2.2, widely adopted by designers and visual artists. Incorrect gamma settings may lead to dark backgrounds or incorrect material appearances. Therefore, if users face such issues, they should ensure the gamma value is set to 2.2. Finally, the material editor is the core workspace for creating and managing materials within Freeh's Max, where all textures and shaders are configured. Corona Renderer, newly added features and scene optimization methods. After installing Corona Renderer, several new tools are integrated into different sections of Freeh's Max, helping users optimize their rendering process. These tools include lighting options, camera features, and special scene management utilities. Let's go over them one by one. 1. Corona lighting settings. One of the first additions after installing Corona is its dedicated lighting system. This includes Corona Light, used to simulate artificial lights such as lamps and indoor lighting. Corona Sun, designed to simulate sunlight and outdoor environments. These tools are added to the lighting setup section of the software, allowing users to apply highly detailed lighting configurations. 2. Corona Cameras. In the Cameras section, a new feature, Corona Camera, is introduced. This camera is accessible via the standard Corona menu and can be placed directly into the viewport. Users can also create a camera using the shortcut Control +C. Unlike Freeh's Max's default physical camera, the Corona camera provides enhanced realism and more advanced settings. Free environmental and atmospheric systems. Corona does not add any new options in the Systems section by default. However, users can still leverage the built-in daylight system in Freeh's Max and configure it for Corona rendering. This section includes systems such as sunlight, along with other atmospheric tools that allow for the creation of natural effects such as rain and cloudy skies. 4. Corona modeling tools. After installing Corona, a new Corona tab appears under Geometry, featuring 2 essential tools. Corona Proxy, one of the most crucial tools for optimizing and simplifying 3D models. Using proxying, users can reduce the complexity of heavy models, making it possible to run large scenes smoothly even on lower-spec machines. Corona Scatter. This tool distributes objects across the environment. For instance, when building a forest scene, trees can be randomly efficient. Corona Converter, and advanced rendering concepts in Corona. One of the most useful tools in Corona Renderer is the Corona Converter. This tool plays a crucial role in converting and optimizing materials and objects imported from other rendering engines into Freeh's Max. 1. Purpose of Corona Converter. Often, users download objects such as trees, beds, or other 3D models from archives and want to import them into Freeh's Max. These models are usually created using different rendering engines, primarily V-Ray and Corona. If the objects are originally rendered with Corona, they generally require no conversion. However, if users want to update them to the latest version of Corona, Corona Converter ensures full compatibility with the latest rendering features. For objects created in V-Ray, conversion is essential because they will not display correctly in the scene without it. With Corona Converter, users can transform V-Ray materials into Corona-compatible materials in a single click. Simply open the tool, select Convert to Corona, and the process is completed in just a few seconds. Two. Understanding bias versus unbiased rendering in Corona. A significant aspect of Corona Renderer is bias rendering, which is one of the most advanced rendering formulas available today. In summary, bias rendering is optimized for speed and efficiency, whereas unbiased rendering prioritizes physically accurate simulations of light and materials. Corona Renderer achieves realistic results using bias rendering, but with much faster processing. 3 popular Corona features: light mix and denoising. One of the standout and most widely used features in Corona Renderer is light mix. This tool allows users to adjust different light sources dynamically after rendering, without modifying initial settings. Because of its flexibility, light mix has been one of the key factors that led users to switch from V-Ray to Corona. However, V-Ray has also included this feature in its newer versions, 5 and above. Advanced features and key settings in Corona Renderer. One of the special tools in Corona Renderer is denoising, which helps eliminate unwanted noise during rendering. If your system has an Intel CPU, you can use Corona high-quality denoising, which significantly enhances the output quality, especially in interior scenes with detailed textures. 1. Corona Material Library. Corona Renderer includes a vast library of ready-to-use materials that allow users to speed up their workflow. These materials provide a wide range of textures and surface settings that suit various types of projects. 2. Corona Lighting and Maps. Corona offers extensive lighting and mapping tools. Corona Sky, a newly added feature in version 7, incorporating PRG Sky, which supports real perspective and volume effect, enhancing the realism and depth of the scene. Corona Multi-Map and Round Edge, 2 useful tools for fine-tuning material details and creating smooth edge shading. 3. Rendering effects and camera settings in Corona. Corona Renderer provides several post-production effects. Depth of field and motion blur, realistic effects for adding photographic depth. Bloom and glare, light reflections that bring glowing highlights to images. Exposure and color control, adjustments for fine-tuning brightness and color accuracy. 4. Other advanced features. Corona Displacement Modifier, used for creating detailed, uneven surfaces. HDRI Mapping, supports 32-bit HDRI images for professional lighting setups. Corona Material Override, allows users to override all scene materials from a single control panel. 5. Phoenix FD Integration. Recent versions of Corona Renderer now support Phoenix FD3, a specialized plugin for simulating water, fire, smoke, and wind. This tool is widely used in animation projects and visual effects. Artistic rendering and initial render test settings in Corona. Silence at Peak is the title of our latest render project, created in collaboration with engineer Dinshvar Yashar Narizadeh, our post-production expert, and myself. This project was designed as an artistic concept, rather than a commercial or marketing render. The goal was to create a specific atmosphere with a unique style. Each rendering project should have a story, concept, and emotional depth. This project is a perfect example of how rendering is not just about technical accuracy, but can also be a form of digital art. 1. Command parameters for single-frame rendering. In the command parameters section, users can set the rendering mode. If you want a single-frame render, select Single Shot. This is the setting used for the final render of Silence at Peak. For animations, 2 main modes exist. Range mode. This mode allows rendering from frame 0 to frame 900 for a complete animation. Frames per second, FPS. In standard animation, 1 second of animation requires around 30 frames, meaning you need at least 30 renders for a 1-second clip. 2. Optimizing render settings for fast testing. To optimize rendering speed during testing, follow these steps. Reduce resolution. In custom resolution, set the value to 800 x 600, which is the minimum suitable size for a render test. Choose the right denoising mode. If you have an NVIDIA GPU, use NVIDIA denoising for quick noise reduction. Enable Fast Preview Rendering. In GI settings, select Fast Preview to speed up calculations. Disable Displacement in test rendering. In Corona Displacement Modifier, turn off displacement for quicker results. Adjust scene colors. To speed up the render, set all materials temporarily to white to remove unnecessary texture effects. Lighting and camera effects configuration. Before rendering the final scene, adjusting light mix settings is crucial, allowing direct control over lighting adjustments. Future sessions will cover advanced topics such as post-production effects, bloom and glare, and other professional rendering techniques. Advanced render testing and optimal resolution selection in Corona. During the rendering process, optimizing settings for test rendering is crucial. One key adjustment is light mix settings. Sometimes, disabling light mix allows users to analyze how ambient lighting and other configurations impact the render. Once light mix is disabled, users can adjust sky settings, selecting the atmosphere and sky type. A recommended approach is to use Corona Sky with 3ds Max's default sky for optimized test rendering. 1. Viewport rendering settings. Choosing the correct viewport angle is essential for rendering an accurate test. If a specific camera is set, the render will be taken from that angle. Incorrectly positioned cameras may result in unexpected framing. Different render modes in viewport. Full frame render, complete scene rendering. Render selected object. If only a specific section of the scene needs rendering, selecting that object ensures only that portion is processed. Region rendering. This allows users to render only a selected region, which is particularly useful for testing details. 2. GI settings and fast test render processing. Global illumination GI significantly impacts final render quality, but can slow down test rendering. To optimize test render speed, temporarily disable GI during test rendering. Skipping complex GI calculations ensures faster rendering previews. 4. Difference between crop and blow-up rendering. One of the unique tools in Corona Renderer is blow-up rendering, which differs from crop rendering. Crop rendering renders only a small section of the image while maintaining the original resolution. Blow-up rendering renders a small part of the scene at full resolution, allowing detailed inspections.
اوکی میذاریم رو حالت ویو بچا فقط مثلا گذاشتی رو حالت پول اپ این دیگه نمیذاره کاری دیگه بکنید میگم اینو بذار رندر بگیر بس سلام دیدی نمیتونی کاری دیگه بکنی بدون که روی این هستش میذاریم رو حالت ویو اوکی بخش خیلی مهمه بعدیمون بچا بخش
Free resolution and auto size settings. For resolution setup, auto size plays a crucial role. Users can select from standard video presets, HDTV, such as 1280x720 HD, 1920x1080 Full HD. Each resolution affects output quality and usage. If the image is for social media platforms like Instagram, 1280x720 is suitable. If the image is intended for large format printing of 1920x1080 or higher, is recommended to retain sharpness. Lower resolution images may become pixelated when zoomed in. Advanced render test settings and resolution/aspect ratio options in Corona. Imagine that you set up the resolution settings for your render so that it takes 3 to 4 iterations. This adjustment dramatically improves quality by increasing the pixel count. You achieve astonishing quality for high-end prints. For example, if you plan to print a 4-meter, 6-meter, or even an 8-meter banner, you can boost the resolution accordingly. However, note that increasing the resolution excessively will also drastically raise the render time. In fact, the biggest factor affecting render time is precisely the resolution and pixel count. It also depends on your hardware. Personally, on my laptop, I used lower resolutions to save time, but on the system I work with, I set the minimum resolution at 1920 x 1080, which provides the best quality for renders intended for viewing on platforms like Instagram, Facebook, or any monitor. Of course, when it comes to high-quality prints, for huge banners for instance, you can increase the resolution even further. Moreover, there are two key options you should keep in mind. One is the precise resolution setting that determines the pixel count of the final render output. For instance, if you set the output resolution to a standard like HDTV, the image will display with that exact standard quality. The other option is called image aspect, sometimes referred to as PS. It's generally recommended to leave this at its default value, because adjusting it too much can distort the image's proportions and comprom. When it comes to framing, we have two types. Standard horizontal frame, HDTV. This frame works best for display on televisions, laptops, or standard monitors and follows the regular monitor resolutions. Custom vertical frame. This frame is used when the artistic vision or client's needs require a different presentation, such as for social media posts or specific presentation formats. You might opt for a vertical or even a square composition if that better suits your project's goals. For example, when I apply these settings on my system, I use a standard HDTV resolution, such as 1280 x 720 or 1920 x 1080, for digital displays, ensuring that my renders appear correctly on screens. But if I plan to print an image on a huge banner, I adjust the resolution so that the output remains crisp with no visible pixels, even though higher resolution dramatically increases render time. A key takeaway during test renders is to always check both your resolution settings and the aspect ratio/frame options before final output. Whether you end up with a single-shot render in a standard horizontal format or a custom vertical/square format depends on the artistic direction and the intended final output. For instance, when reviewing renders on Instagram, I sometimes see custom sizing adjustments applied automatically. This confirms that every image is precisely adjusted. Aspect ratio in Corona rendering and its role in final composition. One of the most important aspects to consider in rendering is the aspect ratio, which refers to the proportional relationship between the width and height of the image. Aspect ratio significantly affects the composition and final presentation of a render. 1. Difference between standard and custom aspect ratios. In general, there are two types of aspect ratio settings. Standard aspect ratio HDTV or 16:9. This format is ideal for monitors, TVs, and laptops, providing a wide and cinematic frame. Custom aspect ratio. Users can manually adjust the width to height ratio, which is useful for artistic renders, presentations, and social media posts, requiring square or vertical aspect ratios. 2. Common aspect ratios in architectural renders. Some widely used aspect ratios in architectural rendering include aspect ratio equals 1 right arrow, a perfect square 1600 x 1600, ideal for social media posts and graphic presentations. Aspect ratio equals 0.8 right arrow, one of the most common aspect ratios for building facade renders. Aspect ratio equals 0.9 right arrow, a balanced option for various architectural projects. Aspect ratio equals 0.75 right arrow, ideal for Instagram story images, ensuring the screen is fully covered. Aspect ratio equals 0.65 right arrow, a useful option for vertical compositions. Aspect ratio equals 4.3 right arrow, the classic CRT TV ratio, which causes black bars to appear on top and bottom. 3. Aspect lock for consistency. Once the aspect ratio is selected, aspect lock can be enabled to ensure that the width-to-height proportion remains fixed when adjusting resolution settings. This helps maintain the scene composition and prevents sudden changes in image dimensions.
مثلا می‌بینی که برق احتمالش هست که بره اینو بزنید دیگه تموم میشه خیالت راحته که بعد رندر سیو کرده دیگه توی فریم بافر منتظر نیستی که تو سیوش بکنی اینو بشه ایفی دیگه استفاده کنید توضیح می‌کنم ازش استفاده کنید همین از این بخش با این دو تا کار نداریم دیگه با این کار نداریم از این بخش پروداکشنمون و متریال ادیتورمون حتما روی کرونا تنظیم بشه ببین اینم گذاشتم روی کرونا و متریال ادیتورم هم قفلشو برداری قابل اینه که بذارید روی کرونا اینم که فکر نکنم جاری کرونا نداریم به سیف دیفالت میزنید و از دفعه بعدی هم موتور رندرتون ببین بخش موتور رندر اینجاست بچه‌ها رو هر موتور رندری بذارید الان من مثلا ویری و کرونا رو به آرنولد اینجا دارم یه دونه اسکن لای هستش که رندر محبوب رندر استاندارد چیز هستش خود مکس هستش این روی کرونا و این دو تا هم روی کرونا سیف دیفالت میزنید و از دفعه بعدی که مکس رو باز می‌کنی با این حالت با موتور رندر کرونا و متریال
Okay, we have reached the end of this session, and we covered all the important points. Be sure to practice and repeat these features so that you are prepared for the next session. I am Behrouz Bigham from the Architecture and Graphics Simulation Studio. Have a good day.